So we basically, between us over the last month, done about 50 nutrition consults now. I think over that time, I know I've noticed some patterns and some common themes and stuff that we've picked up in a lot of people. Observations from your end on what you see as some common themes with people, observations?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that I'm finding with all of my clients is that it's coming down to organizational preparation.
Yeah.
So we might talk about that they want to increase the amount of protein that they're having in their day, or increasing their good fats. But the step before that is making sure that it's in the fridge. The step before that is making sure that the shopping list has been done, or that the food has been prepared. So a lot of it is really coming down to making sure that they're organized, and that leads into all the other good habits. I don't think anyone said to me yet that they've had a good meal prepared and they still ordered out, or they've had a good meal prepared and they still went and got the chocolate instead. It's just making it easier that it's when you're organized.
Yeah. Do you think
Yeah.
that a lot of the approaches, because I know all the clients that I've had come to me, we are the latest in a long chain of strategies, initiatives they've undertaken to try and fix their food. And the common theme with the others seems to be this willpower thing. You know, you have to try harder, you have to want it more, you have to be more motivated, which, I mean, if that worked, people wouldn't come to see us. So it's proof that willpower, have more determination and grit model isn't necessarily working.
Yeah.
Do you think this focus on an environmental modification is the key driver here in the changes that we're seeing with people?
Yeah, definitely. And the example would be that if the good food isn't in the fridge, then the next easiest option is Uber Eats. But if the food is there and it's ready to go, it's so easy just to grab it out and to have it. And building on that environmental model is that we're kind of using the behaviors and the habits that the client already has, and then just moving it closer to where they want to be, so closer to being more healthier. It's not a big step. It's kind of just moving over a little nudge. Yeah.
Do you think that the key here is, well, a lot of unhealthy foods are the more convenient foods. So if something is easy for people to eat, that's what they're going to go with. And I think we need to stop trying to fight laziness.
Yeah.
Because I think that human beings as a species, and probably any species really, is inherently lazy. I mean, you don't see a lion on the savannah going out and doing extra exercise. We're evolved to conserve energy, to eat as much as we can, to exercise as little as possible. So I think as soon as we stop trying to fight laziness and just accept that people are going to be lazy, and if we can do that, then we can say, okay, let's make eating that is more towards the healthy end of this scale, let's make that the easier option. Because then if we can say, yes, people are lazy, we accept that. People will look for the convenient option, we can accept that. Let's make sure that the convenient option also happens to be the healthy option.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I think we're removing all the barriers to healthy eating there, or at least the major barrier to healthy eating.
Yeah, yeah. And if we were to reframe laziness into efficiency, because one of the reasons that we might want to eat is to get energy, and the benefit is that it tastes great. Efficiency-wise, it's really easy to have what's ever immediately in your vicinity, and if it tastes good and it fills you up, even better.
There's no barrier then to entry, is there?
Yeah, yeah. So definitely, if we,
I see two ways we can do this, and I know these are some of the ways that we implement during our consults when we talk about those key environmental drivers to support each habit that we plan for that week. We can either, as we've talked about, make the healthy food the convenient choice, or we can make the less healthy food the inconvenient choice. So it's about saying, okay, we need to add friction. So we need to increase the number of steps. We need to increase the difficulty for people to put that sweet processed carbohydrate snack in their mouth. And we need to decrease the number of steps to decrease the friction for people to put that more healthy, unprocessed, protein-rich snack into their mouth.
Yeah, yeah.
that is the key. And I think if we do both of those things, I mean, even at the moment, if they're close together, if we can start to increase the friction to the less optimal stuff and then decrease the friction to the more optimal stuff, we don't then have to rely on willpower. We don't have to rely on, there's a quicksand I'm having to get through to build these habits. It should actually be easier to start this new habit than what people were doing before.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you have any good examples of how you've used that with your clients?
A client and I were talking about having that temptation to binge and then actually binging. And we spoke about how modifying the shopping list, so making sure that the binge-worthy food isn't in the house, puts a huge step in place before you actually get to have that food. And that might be driving to the deli or driving to the shops to have to pick up the binge-worthy food, which puts a lot of time and an actual environmental distance between doing that. So having the food that she likes to have that is still tasty and is healthy and helps her with her goals in the house, that's more likely what she would choose to eat instead of going down to Woolies and picking up the chocolate just for the sake of getting chocolate. Yeah.
I think one of the positives of this approach is that quite often we can put a single initiative in place, like a one foul swoop, one big action, and then all the benefits of that extend into the long run from an environmental point of view. So I had a client, and for breakfast she was having, it was always some sort of processed cereal or toast, that sort of thing. And she really enjoyed things like eggs and scrambled eggs, loved making omelets and stuff, but there was too much of a barrier to entry there. So what we actually had to do was she completely overhauled her pantry, because when she opened the cupboard, right in front of her was where she kept the bread and the cereal. So it was basically step 1, open door. Step 2, take out. Step 3, put in bowl, milk, eat. So we had her rearrange her pantry where the bread and cereal is now kept on the top shelf behind all the cooking supplies and stuff. And she has to actually now walk into the dining room, get a chair, take it to the cupboard, stand on the chair, move the cooking stuff, get the cereal. And she's also rearranged her fridge, so when she opens it, the eggs are right in the door there. So there's a reduced barrier to entry. She has her omelette pan is now in the top drawer, so she can access that straight away. And it's now harder for her to eat less healthy than it is to eat healthy. Have you found any common themes? Because obviously the spoke model that we use, I mean, effectively it's a wagon wheel with 8 different spokes on there, and we rate people's habits on a scale of 1 to 10 each time we catch up with them for each of these spokes. So see if I miss any here, you can fill in the blanks. We've got your protein, carbohydrates, fat, vegetables, alcohol, hydration, sleep.
Relationship with food.
And relationship with food, cool. So of those 8 spokes, are you seeing any common themes in terms of where people are maybe lower on the spokes? Because obviously that's what we have to work on. If there's a broken spoke in this metaphorical wagon wheel, that is the spoke that needs fixing for that wheel to turn, and we're saying that the ability of that wheel to turn is your health, effectively.
So definitely I would find that a lot of women are scoring very low on the protein spoke. And then even to the point when we then discuss about how we might be able to increase their protein, there seems to be maybe a knowledge gap of what good protein is, where I could get good protein from, and how to make it more simple to fit into a diet.
Why is there a gender gap here, do you think?
I think it's because guys get told that they need to eat a lot of protein. A lot of fitness advertising is towards guys being big and bulky, and that's usually connected with a protein supplement. And the opposite then is true too for ladies, is that a lot of the time the marketing is focused on being thin or skinny, and that's usually geared around salads and avoidance of carbs. I tend to see that shift now with how ladies are marketed to, but it's still an education process of understanding how to get easy, simple, lean, and proteins.
Yeah. Do you think once that education is done, it will be an easy fix, or is that environmental thing still more important?
Yeah, so I think we still need to work with our clients to be able to help them then get that food into their house easy, and making sure that it's in the fridge, easily accessible, doesn't always need to be cooked. Then it improves their environment around them so they can find it easier to eat more protein.
It's interesting. A lot of people, when we have our first consult, they will say to me, I'm here because I need to be held accountable and I need you to teach me what I should be eating. And I always sort of argue that point with them, because I don't believe that the vast majority of the population doesn't know how they should be eating. Yeah. So maybe, the sort of 1 or 2%ers they need some help with. But generally speaking, I would say that 95% of people understand 95% of what they should be eating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
People know they shouldn't be eating lots of sugar and lots of refined processed foods, and people know that eating lots of veggies is good for you. I mean, there are some common themes here, and I argue this point that no, I don't think you need to learn what you should be eating. I think you need to learn how to create new habits and how to tweak and modify these environmental factors to make the new habits easier to initiate than the old habits were to continue.
Yeah.
So, I think, and again, maybe this is why we are hopefully at the end of a long chain of ideas or initiatives that people have pursued to try and improve this.
Yes.
The education, yes, may be a very small part of it, but as you say, maybe just on 1 or 2 of those spokes. Do you find that the protein has been a keystone habit? And what I mean by that is if they fix the protein spoke, is there then a cascade, a carryover effect onto some of these other spokes? Have you had any experience with that?
Yeah, I think so, because of the way that protein needs to be prepared, I guess, almost. So for someone to have more lean proteins in their diet, they usually have to prepare it earlier in the week. So for like meal prepping, or if you're in a family point of view, meal prepping doesn't always work. So making sure that it's ready to go in the fridge. And then it's not like you're going to put refined carbs, highly refined carbs in with that good protein that you've just prepared. So it seems to start creating this cascade effect. To improve not only protein but then also the amount of veggies someone has, the good carbs, being able to add in those good fats.
I'll tell you what I've noticed. I've definitely noticed the relationship there between the protein and the carbohydrate spokes, because people will often replace one with the other. So their protein habits improve, their carbohydrate habits tend to drop as a result. So it's this not focusing on, we need to take away bad foods, but if we can focus on the addition and saying, let's add in some good foods, and again, not trying to categorize foods as good or bad, because we know it's all a continuum, but saying, okay, let's add in some more of these more optimal foods. As a result, the other stuff starts to drop. Something really interesting that I've also seen, and I'd be interested as to whether you've seen this in the consults you've done, the impact between the protein or carbohydrate or fat spokes and the number on the relationship with food spoke. Have you seen any relationships there between those?
I think from a point of view, my clients might report that binges or periods of not eating begin to reduce. Again, that might be because the food is there, ready, available, and already prepared, and that because they're eating more often of the good foods, they're less likely to feel that slump and want to binge. And also, if we're working on vegetables or getting in enough good fats, we need to be eating often enough as well. So those periods of time of not eating go away. They're the main connections that I see with that.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I've seen, which is really interesting, is this relationship spoke. So look, I'll just give some context for anyone who's watching or listening to this who's not familiar with what we're talking about with this. It's basically what your relationship is with food. You know, whether you eat mindlessly, or your eating patterns are determined by your mood or how well your day went, whether you're pretty consistent or you binge, or maybe you starve yourself down to the point where we're looking at people with some form of disordered eating as well. What I've found with people is that by choosing one very small habit to focus on, which is effectively the outcome of every single consult that we do, this is the single thing you need to work on, and it's not just increased protein, but I will have a protein snack at least once a day, and that can just be their focus, their single habit for the week. I've found that by allowing people to focus just on a single thing, they're not fixated and hung up and entering this negative relationship with how they eat, this sort of fight and battle with how they eat, where they just say, okay, I'm just focusing on one thing. If the other things aren't perfect, that's completely okay. And I've found this natural sort of increase in their relationship with food as they self-report it, because they're now not fixating on every tiny detail. They're just focusing on one thing at a time.
Yeah, definitely.
It's definitely a what comes first, the chicken or the egg sort of thing, where we say, well, do we have to fix people's relationship with food so we can then build habits? Or do we start to introduce some little habits and that will fix their relationship with food? And I think it's the latter.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
So to your point, one of my clients were working on relationship with food, and some of the actions and strategies we came up with then centered around planning, organization, making sure that we had those meals ready to go, because that would then improve her relationship with food as well.
Yeah. It's almost like a meta skill, isn't it? It's a spoke which is dependent on every single other spoke to be good.
Yeah.
We've talked a bit about this need for food preparation for being organized, and I think perhaps this is something we need to dig a little deeper into, because this could be a barrier to long-term change.
Mm-hmm.
So again, just to give some context, we ask all of our clients during a nutrition consult, as we introduce each habit, and before we sort of sign off and formalize, this is the habit that we're looking to build during this week, we will say, is this something that you could still be doing in 10 years? And if the answer is no, then we change it. If the answer is, yeah, probably, I think so, then we change it. If the answer is a resounding, yeah, this is completely easy, of course I can keep doing this, all I'm doing is having a single glass of water every time I brush my teeth, then we say, okay, cool, we can pursue this. So further to that, do you think this need for a weekly food prep, I have to spend half an hour or an hour every Sunday? Two-part question. A, is that sustainable for the next decade for a person? Because my argument would be perhaps not. And B, if it turns out that it's not sustainable, then what's the alternative?
Yeah. It's a hard one to think about, right? Because a couple of my clients will do food prep. They find it's like a good anchor at the start of their week or the start of their work week, because that makes their work week easier. But they will only food prep for the time that they're at work, not the meals that they would have at home that they enjoy cooking. Also, I have a mum who has a family and young kids, and organising food for the time that she's at home really doesn't work with having the kids around. So she will cook almost every meal. So I wonder if having that food organised is a sustainable habit when someone's going to work, to take away that need to, walk down to the deli. It's aiding that environmental change. But if you find cooking at home easy and enjoyable, then we won't need to do food prep.
Yeah. And maybe again try and leverage some of those pre-established habits, because it's really hard to create behavior change. Like, humans are so hardwired for what we do. 55% of everything we do is habit. So like a huge amount, over 50% of every single of the millions of little tiny actions we take every day is a habit.
Yeah.
So it's hard to add stuff to that. Of course, once it's there, then it just runs on autopilot, which is what we're trying to do by changing their environment. But I think if we can piggyback it on top of what they're already doing, then we have a pre-established neural network, then it becomes easy. So strategies like, if this client that you're talking about enjoys preparing food, it doesn't take twice as long to prepare twice as much food.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be, I'm preparing twice as much food, and it may be 1.2 times as long, or even the same amount of time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So cooking 5 liters of bolognese is not going to really take you any longer than cooking a liter of bolognese.
Yes.
So being able to leverage off current habits and say, okay, well, I'm just going to make extra and freeze it. They still get that dopamine hit of, I enjoy cooking, I like making food. They then get the satisfaction of storing up nuts for the winter and say, yep, cool, I'm now prepped and I'm now ahead of the game. Yeah. Because I'm the whole food prep thing, I think, is really a strategy that has come out of the relying on willpower branch of nutrition coaching and nutritional support.
Yeah.
And I think being less reliant on that in the long run is going to be a good thing.
Yeah. And I think it's also a young person's game, right? Food
100%.
prep.
Yep.
I doubt that we will see. Sorry?
It's very millennial.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. I doubt that I'll see, when I'm in my 90s, a friend food prepping for the rest of their week.
Yeah. Is that, though, a product of time? Is it that the person who is in their 90s is able to take their time and spend half an hour a day, cooking their food, using a slow cooker, roasting meat, as opposed to maybe what you or I or some of our clients with higher responsibility jobs or less time, they basically need to batch their creation of food, is effectively what they're doing. Because every time you need to do a task, there's the 10 minutes it takes to do that task, but also the 10 minutes to prepare to do that task.
Yeah.
The 10 minutes after that task where they wind down and then start preparing for the next task.
Yeah.
Whereas if you can say, we're going to do all our food prep in one go, I mean, whether we're talking about food or productivity here, it's trying to batch similar tasks. You reply to all your emails at the same time. You file all your reports at the same time. You're creating, if you're putting out content from a business point of view, you're batching all of this content creation at the same time. So maybe this is why it's effective for people with less time available.
Yeah.
I've used the sort of strategy of a plan B, like break in case of emergency, where they have some frozen meals in the freezer. So if everything else does fall apart and they're not prepared, there's always that to fall back on. Because at the moment for people, the plan B is Uber Eats or takeaway or the easy, convenient option.
Yeah. Or I guess the plan A1 is the food delivery services that we now have. Yeah. Right? Because they're trying to help have it readily available, so you don't have to go to the shops or you don't have to think about the recipe.
And there are plenty of healthy options there, and even the Uber Eats option, there are good healthy options there. And people being able to make environmental changes like printing and downloading a copy of the menu of their top 3 Uber Eats places within 10Ks that offer the healthy options, highlighting them, maybe having that on the fridge. It's a single time gross effort that says, okay, I'm going with Uber Eats because it's convenient. I can choose from one of these 18 highlighted options. The steps are there. It also reduces that sort of decision fatigue or that overwhelming choice. You can just go, okay, choose one of these options and I'm ticking the boxes and still keeping the habits. This is a different approach, hey? I mean, it's not an approach that a lot of people have taken that I'm aware of. It's a novel way to identify first what needs work, to ask the client whether they are happy to be focusing on that, to establish up to 5 different strategies or potential planned habits that we could come up with, but then for each of those basically rate them in terms of the importance of that habit and also how easy that habit is. And then based on the importance and the ease, how likely are they to do it? Is it a low-hanging fruit? So, if someone says, well, this is really important, but it's also very difficult, it's not going to happen. If something is really easy, but it's not very important, yes, it'll happen, but there's no point. So we're looking for these habits that are both very important and very easy. And if we can find that sweet spot, we then say, okay, of the 5 strategies we've identified, this is the one that we're going to take on this week. And then basically, as we've talked about a lot, looking at what environmental tweaks we can make to make the initiation, the adherence of this habit a long-term prospect, a long-term thing that people will do effectively until the day they die. So this, I think, and that process is a novel approach to a degree, taking more of a focus on human psychology rather than the science of nutrition. This is still in its infancy. Again, we've only been running this process for the last 6 weeks or so. Do you think there is potential here for this to be a missing approach for people? Obviously, this will evolve. Do you think we're on the right track with it?
Definitely. We've seen in the personal trainer or gym world, you catch up with your personal trainer once a week or twice a week, and you seem to get better results than if you were just following your gym program around. Sometimes you might do it, sometimes you might not do it. And that's analogous to having a meal plan set out for you by somewhere on the internet. Yeah. You might follow it sometimes, you might not, and then you never see that person again. Whereas this approach, we're working on habits. So that's like one step below the actual what you're eating. So we're working on the habits that will lead to what you eat. You're catching up with us weekly or fortnightly. And in that time, we can really work on the strategies and the habits better than if you were just reading it off a blog or if you were reading it in the comments section. I think there's so much more value in being able to catch up with your coach and talk about what you're working on and talk about your habits rather than constantly worrying about should we have a fruit or a vegetable. That's not the important thing. It's about the habits.
And I think interestingly on that point is actually having that weekly or fortnightly consult with one of our nutrition coaches. That's not making people reliant on us for accountability. It's not making people less independent. In a strange way, I think they're actually becoming more independent from that approach, from actually speaking with someone like you or I on a regular basis, as opposed to following a meal plan or, this is what you have Monday for breakfast. I think it's actually making people more independent with it because we are teaching them how to take control over what they eat and not just following a guideline that they've read on a blog somewhere or that they've printed off or some person has set up for them as a one-time event. I think we're actually putting the power into people's hands more because they are now in control of this process, and this process becomes autopilot. It becomes cruise control, as opposed to, well, every Monday morning you have to do this. Every Monday lunchtime you have to do this. It's putting the power back in their hands.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, cool. I really think from what I've seen so far, and again, we've got a sample size of about 50 consults so far. From what I've seen, we could really be onto something, and I think this can be a really powerful way to not just change people's eating habits, but to change people's health habits in the long run. Yeah.